Welcome, everybody. We will start in a minute or so as we allow delegates to join the event. Please bear with us. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the second edition of the Colombian Mining Roadshow. Before we start, some housekeeping so we can run the discussions smoothly. If you are experiencing audio and video problems, please log out and log in again. Make sure that all other programs that utilize the camera and audio are closed. If it does not work, contact us via the chat box and our support team will try to assist you. To interact with the speakers, please post your questions in the chat box and a member of our team will pass that on to the relevant moderators who will put the questions to the panel. Presentations will be shared with delegates attending today after a feedback form is filled in. So please welcome Simon Adamsdale, Chairman of the Board at the British and Colombian Chamber.
Good morning to those of you who are in Latin America and Colombia, and good afternoon to those of us who are in the UK. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to this second edition of the Colombian Mining Roadshow. My name is Simon Adamsdale, and I'm the chairman of the British and Colombian Chamber of Commerce, which is based in London. It's been here for some 28 years, following a meeting between the British Prime Minister on his first visit to Colombia, John Major at the time, with the President of Colombia at the time, President Gaviria. And since then, we've been operating, supporting investors with information, expertise, and introduction. The objective of this second edition of the Roadshow is to review the mining sector under the position of the energy transition phase. We have a talented group of speakers addressing topics of interest for the mining industry. There are also opportunities to meet investors on the 4th of November and also on the 7th. And we have already fixed up some meetings taking place tomorrow. The Chamber of Commerce is here to support expansion in Colombia with information, introductions, and expertise right in your doorstep if you're based in London. We also help to find investors and put them together with projects in the country. Today's program combines 2 panels and 2 presentations. The first panel is an examination of global demand for raw materials and commodities, 50% of which are in Latin America, which represents huge opportunities for British firms. but this is also balanced by the appetite of investors and access to capital. That's first panel one. Panel two addresses the needs of the local population versus the needs of the country and the world. And we also examine, can mining benefit local population? And is there a way forward which will help the local people? The first presentation would be a review of the assets in Colombia, mining assets in Colombia at this point in time. And the second presentation will address the topic of disruptive technology and the support it can provide with the mining sector. And that speaker will make the closing remarks of the conference. But before I hand over to the first moderator, Theodore Kahn, I'd just like to remind you that the support is available from the British Columbian Chamber of Commerce. We provide information, expertise, and introduction. And this is particularly important, especially in the current uncertainty, while the new government addresses its policies and before they have been established. And incidentally, we are running or taking investors, potential investors, on a mission to Latin America, to Colombia, in probably March or April next year. So with that, I would like to hand over to Theodore Kahn from Control Risks, who is our first moderator on our first panel. Over to you, Theo.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you very much to the British and Colombian Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to participate in this event, and a special welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Theodore Kahn. I lead Control Risks Global Risk Analysis practice in the Andean region, based here in Bogota. And this is, as Simon alluded to, of course, a very timely moment for this panel on the mining sector prospects in Colombia and also in Latin America more broadly. On the one hand, we are of course seeing growing evidence of the key role that the region can play as a supplier of strategic minerals that will be in ever greater demand as the energy transition gains momentum. As the World Bank recently projected, reaching the goals of the Paris Agreement will imply across the board around a four-fold increase in mineral requirements for clean energies over the next couple of decades. And of course, certain strategic minerals such as lithium, graphite, cobalt, and nickel will see sort of truly impressive increases in demand. On the other hand, of course, the region is facing some headwinds in terms of a challenging global economic environment with major economies such as the US and Europe heading towards a recession amid stubbornly high inflation and rapid central bank tightening. And in the case of China, is facing a severe growth deceleration. This, of course, is causing a tightening of global financial conditions, which is affecting risk appetite among investors, all topics that we will get into in this panel. And at the same time, we're entering a period of growing geopolitical risk and increasing scrutiny of the environmental and social performance of investments. And these are factors that will certainly affect the region and could potentially end up favoring Latin America compared to other mining jurisdictions around the world, issues which we'll also touch on in the course of the event today. And of course, to add a final layer, the region, as Simon alluded to, is experiencing political change with new governments taking office in many major countries. So all this adds up to a scenario in which there are clear opportunities for mining in Colombia and across the region. But companies and investors will, in order to take advantage of those opportunities, will need to navigate and manage sort of a growing set of issues and potential risks. And so today, in the first panel, we have a fantastic group of panelists who will help us make sense of this landscape. And I will now briefly introduce them before diving into the discussion. So first, we have Marcelo Croqui, who is Managing Director for Latin America at Machin Capital, where he oversees acquisitions, investments, and financial advisory activities in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Colombia. Marcelo has more than 20 years of experience in banking and energy industries, including with the Brazilian bank Itaú Unibanco, and he has also held senior roles at global energy companies, including Enel and Endesa. He has extensive experience in greenfield projects, business restructuring, and M&A activities, spanning infrastructure, oil and gas, and power. And he holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and an MBA with majors in corporate finance and energy. We also have with us today Milton Montoyo Pardo, who is Director of the Mining and Energy Law Institute at the Universidad Externado in Colombia, and also a mining and energy attorney at Holland and Knight's Bogota office. Milton has more than 20 years of experience handling issues within mining, energy, and environment sectors, including in-depth experience with due diligence and mining transactions, acquisitions of assets in the mining and energy industries, and renewables regulation in Colombia. Prior to joining Holland and Knight, Milton was founder and owner of a boutique law firm focused on mining and energy advisory services. And finally, we have Clive Line, who is CFO of Serabi Gold, a company that's been active in Brazil's mining sector for the past 20 years. He has extensive experience and knowledge of that country's mining industry. Clive is a chartered accountant and has been involved in mining and energy companies since 1987. And he has worked and overseen financial and legal issues for exploration and development projects in many regions of the world, including Africa, Europe, and the former Soviet Union. So I want to start off with sort of a first round of questions that tries to sort of put into context the Latin American mining sector in terms of this global environment that I just laid out. And so I'll start with the question for Marcelo, which is if you could just sort of give us your view on how global investors are viewing the mining sector in Latin America currently, and sort of what are the key factors that are shaping this view.
Well, thanks, Theodore, for the introduction. Thanks to my colleagues for having me. Let me start by saying our view on strategic investors, I mean the global mining companies. We think they're still very selective in terms of investments. Their capex level still around 40% of the peak of last cycle. And this is not because they are lacking cash flows. That's because they are prioritizing to deliver returns to their shareholders rather than investing in major greenfields developments. In other hand, when it comes to financial investors, it is very impressive to realize that during the last 10 years, the amount of capital allocated to what we call private markets in general, I mean private equities, private debt, real asset direct investments done by fund managers in different sectors grew enormously. Today, to represent something around $10 trillion in total assets under management. However, when we zoom mining, it remains underpenetrated. It represents around 1% of that. So having said that, we really, underinvestment in mining is notoriously, in our point of view. As prices are recovering, we see investment resuming, growing slowly, but not at the same pace as in the past. We think that at some point, a new capex boom may take over, triggered by supply shortfall, but definitely we're still not there yet. Okay, so why is that? Probably there are many reasons. I will highlight two of them, which seems very relevant to me. First has to do with the business cycle in mining. It has been very difficult to figure out exactly where we are in the business cycle which for mining investors is critical, given the highly cyclical nature of the sector and the high intensive capital needs. The second one has to do with ESG. Today, if you're raising capital for example, for a coal project in Colombia, Australia, South Africa, US, India, Indonesia, whatever, you will be restricted to very specific pockets. Beyond that, and also regarding ESG, we still have to solve this dichotomy of the green tech metals, where many financial investors, they have investment mandates fully committed to the energy transition, but they are still avoiding the mining industry. And as I always hear from my clients, it doesn't grow, you have to mine it, right?
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Marcelo. I just wanted to follow up very quickly, if I may, because you touched on ESG concerns as sort of one of the two main factors affecting sort of investors' view of the region. I'm curious, what's your sort of opinion on how well prepared Latin American jurisdictions are to sort of respond to these growing ESG concerns among investors? Where are sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the region, maybe compared to other jurisdictions?
Okay, so regarding Latin America, I would say broadly, I would say geology and the current global geopolitics favor us. But on the other hand, I think that our country risks goes against us. When it comes to ESG, I think we still have to evolve to a more clear regulatory framework in terms of environment license, permitting, and so on, in order to give, especially financial investors who are not experts in the sector, the comfort that they will not get in trouble by getting engaged in mining projects in Latin America.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Marcelo. I'd like to move on to Clive now and sort of ask you, a question based on your extensive experience in Brazil, which is, of course, the region's largest economy and also a major player in the mining sector. So could you just tell us what is your view of the current state of Brazil's mining sector, and how can Brazil contribute to this growing demand for strategic metals and minerals?
Hi, thanks very much, Theodore, and thank you to everybody for your time today. Clearly, Brazil has got a big advantage over many of the other LATAM countries. It's got a very well established 300-year history of mining. It produces something 60 different mineral products out of its mining industry. So it's got a very diverse portfolio which to work with. And we know that it's already, with Vale as sort of one of the world's largest mining companies, it's got that experience. It's got other big mining groups within it. And of course, in terms of its geology and its mining output today, it's a major producer already of some of these strategic minerals that are going to be so important to us as we move forward. Lithium graphite, I think it's 5th largest in lithium production at the moment. It's 3rd largest in graphite, and you mentioned nickel as well, and it's sort of the 8th largest producer of nickel in the world. So it's got a very good base from which to grow. It's been, I think, an attractive country in which to invest. And maybe we'll deal with that a little bit later on in some of the reasons that it's been attractive. But I think to pick up on Marcelo's point, the big attraction of Brazil will be and Latin America generally will be the geology, and that is very favorable for everybody coming through. Geopolitical risk, I think that does vary across them, but I think the political risk, country risk will vary. I don't see, however, that the recent changes in government, the elections there are really going to change things dramatically. For Brazil, there is a little bit of talk of windfall taxes on some of the larger projects, the Carajás mining project in particular. But I think as an environment for companies, both domestic and international, to come into, and certainly we are continuing to see the domestic producers still investing in greenfield opportunities there and wanting to pursue them. I do see that it's got a lot to give as we move forward, and we need to find the right solutions to be able to drive the world forward to where it wants to be in those next 30 years.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Clive. So we'll turn the discussion now to Colombia, and I'd like to bring in Milton. And so to start off, could you please just tell us how you see Colombia positioned in terms of this growing demand for strategic minerals, and what are the key opportunities for Colombia in this global context?
Well, thank you, Theodore, for the invitation. I would say that Colombia right now has a quite interesting position in the region. As you know, traditionally, Colombia has been a producer and exporter of gold, which indeed is also key for strategic industries and key for energy transition. However, right now, Colombia has an interesting position in terms of potential of minerals like copper, for instance, for phosphates, and as well, if we talk about how important is coal for iron industry, and at the same time, iron industry, quite important for energy transition, especially electrical infrastructure, I will say that we have an attractive position right now in the region. However, as well, Clive mentioned in the case of Brazil, there is an important also political risk right now in Colombia, and as well in terms of new mining public policy, and of course as well new mining regulation that could also change the position of Colombia regarding mining industry right now.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Milton. So I guess we already touched a little bit in the first round of questions on some of the country-specific factors and some of the opportunities and challenges at the country level. And so we brought in issues such as the ESG concerns, how those differ across countries, the question of political risk, and how changes in public policy could affect the investment environment in different countries. I guess so. I want to kind of have another sort of round of questions, sort of exploring those issues in a little bit more depth. But I guess maybe we could sort of start by going back to you, Marcelo. And so you mentioned a little bit sort of from the investor side. I'm wondering if you could sort of give us a little more detail on some of the main challenges that mining companies, that sort of corporates are facing in the region when it comes to raising capital.
Well, challenges are everywhere. I think there are different layers of challenges. Some of them are non-controllable, like, for example, what we many of us mentioned it: country risk, political change, tax and regulation change. Some are partially controllable. I mean, environmental aspects, relation with local communities, and so on. And many others are fully controllable. Okay, like having an international standard for the company governance, audit financial statements, a strong mineral resource report, very credible, detailed project development, logistics, and marketing plan, and so on. You definitely don't want to save effort when it comes to fully controllable issues, because it's going to be heavily penalized by the investors, okay? So many times in LATAM, because we don't have an equity public market available for mining junior companies, as we do in Canada and Australia, local developers tend to deal with some of the controllable challenges. I mean, like companies' governance, financial statements, and mineral resource reports using local standards, which becomes an extra challenge when they need to fund the project. So big part of our job as financial advisors is to help our clients to price correctly the risks arising from the non-controllable issues, and support them to do the best job as possible and communicate effectively with investors for the controllable ones.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcelo. And just a quick follow-up on that. So you laid out sort of a range of issues and concerns that sort of you've encountered in your experience. I'm wondering if you could sort of specifically for Colombia, kind of give us your sense of how sort of those different issues play out, and what are sort of the main concerns that need to be taken into account from the financing side.
Yeah, I don't think Colombia is different of any other country in Latin America when it comes to company level or project level, or even a country level. I think countries are pretty similar in terms of risk profiles. But when it comes to Colombia, I would say because Colombia is very resourceful in terms of coal, probably if you're raising capital for coal, you need to do an extra effort to touch the right pockets, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And now sticking with Colombia here, I wanted to turn back to Milton, and maybe you could. I wanted to kind of address sort of in a little more detail, some of the challenges from a legal and regulatory perspective that Colombia is facing. But maybe sort of first, it'd be useful, I think, if you give us maybe a sense of how the legal and regulatory framework has evolved in recent years, and what you sort of see as kind of the main points that should be addressed in order to kind of take advantage of this opportunity as a strategic minerals exporter. Yeah,
sure. Well, I would say that taking into account the current political context, we have, I would say, 4 or 5 challenges. Yeah, the first one is that you have to know that right now there is a commission in the Colombian parliament that is reviewing the mining code, the mining legal code, right? So the process just started. So what we expect is that at the end, this legal reform to our mining code do not discourage the future investment or the new investment in mining. Yeah, so this is one big important challenge. The second one is that right now also the current government is going into the regions to define and work in a new law for communities participation, yeah, in order to define the new rules about how companies and authorities has to go to the regions to check with the communities either what are going to be the conditions or what are going to be the expectations from the community in order to develop future mining projects. However, the big question here is if the government is going to support the communities in order to have a veto power to decide whether the mining project is going to be executed or carried out in the region or not, right? Right now, according with the last decision of the Constitutional Court of Colombia, the communities do not have, they don't have a veto power in order to forbid the mining projects in the regions, and of course not via popular consultations, right? But right now, the question mark is if in this new law for communities participation, the veto power is going to be a reality on behalf of the communities or not, yeah? So this is another important challenge. As well, I will say the third one is how the new public mining policy is going to promote and boost new exploration and new exploitation in mining industry. Or that we can also say in other terms, is going to promote new contracts for mining, specifically for big mining projects. Yeah. It seems like the idea of this government is to promote more small scale mining projects. However, and taking into account the potential that we might have in minerals like copper and as well, of course, in gold, we're afraid that these big mining projects are not going to be enoughly supported by the new public policy of the government. And finally, I will say, and this is a personal opinion, that we should take advantage of the huge potential that Colombia has in terms of coal production and exportation, taking into account the international context that we are seeing in the world and the high demand of this mineral, and of course the scenario of high prices right now.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Milton. You mentioned sort of several interesting points there, where where the new government is potentially looking to introduce changes, and especially around sort of the issue of responsibilities for community consultations and sort of the relations with communities. And I'm wondering, sort of curious if you think there's a potential for there to sort of be kind of more clarity coming out of this process, especially sort of surrounding issues of prior consultation, which there has often been kind of a sort of challenging and somewhat source of uncertainty for projects in different sectors in Colombia. So I'm sort of curious if you what's your take on that? If you sort of think that there could be perhaps a more clear regulatory guidelines or framework coming out of this current process with the new government.
Well, the community engagement has been always an important issue in terms of mining and I would say also oil industry in Colombia. We right now are expecting that this government is going to promote two new laws in this regard. First, if finally we're going to have a previous consultation law in Colombia, and secondly, the law related with community participation. It seems for the messages of the government that these two new laws are going to take a priority in the parliament, in the Colombian parliament. So it would be great if we have those laws, but the idea is as well that the community engagement at the end is not going to become a barrier, to develop future projects in mining industry. As well, as long as we can have a good procedure for community consultation, and as well a proper procedure in terms of relation with communities, and that there is not a veto power in head of the communities, it will be fantastic. We will have more a clear legal framework in that regard, Theodore. Okay, great. Yeah, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see how that process
that process plays out. But certainly, as you mentioned, I mean, there is sort of the possibility that this sort of current process and this current moment could sort of help achieve greater clarity and greater certainty with respect to the obligations for prior consultation of communities and sort of exactly what the obligations and time frames are for those processes. Okay, so I want to now get Clive back into the conversation and sort of interested in sort of drawing on your experience in Brazil to kind of help understand the scenario in Colombia better and perhaps maybe identify some lessons from the Brazilian experience that could be relevant here. So I'm just would like to ask Clive if you could sort of explain a little bit on sort of how Brazil has dealt with some of these issues that we're discussing around financing or around raising capital in the mining sector, but also some of these key sort of legal and regulatory issues that we've been discussing in the case of Colombia.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting, interesting to hear some of the comments that Milton has made there, especially around sort of the community engagement. Brazil, in a simplistic way, has a three-stage licensing process. There's a preliminary license, which essentially is your mandate to go forward, an installation license, which then allows you to build and develop the mine, and then finally an operating license once the mine is up and essentially built and done according to the original specifications and plans. We often consider that first stage, that preliminary license, is probably the most difficult one to get. And although a lot of that is dealt with in the initial stages with sort of primarily the environmental authorities, that license, when it is granted, and it's essentially granted at a state level rather than a federal level, but that's just sort of the way in which reflects the size of Brazil and the way in which that power is devolved. But that does go through and needs approval from sort of about 7 ministries within the state itself, not just environmental. It will be labor, it will be development and infrastructure. But a very key part of that is a community engagement program. So almost the last stage of that is to hold public hearings where the company will sit down. It's a process that's managed by the authorities themselves. They call the hearings. We had about, the last one that we did, we're close to a population of 25,000 people. We probably had most of the mayor and various other groups there, probably about 600 people, including indigenous representatives from indigenous populations. So there was an opportunity for all of those groups to participate in the dialogue. There was an opportunity as a result of the authorities being present at that meeting. There was also the opportunity for the authorities to hear directly the concerns or issues that were being raised and to consider those in the deliberations that were eventually made prior to that preliminary license being granted. So I guess addressing Milton's point specifically on community engagement, there was never a veto point of view on there, but there was definitely a strong consultation and the ability for all the different departments, state authorities that were going to be considering the license and the approval of that to hear directly from those communities as to what their feelings were towards that project development. But that sort of addresses that particular one, which I think was a key issue for Milton in terms of how he sees Colombia moving forward and the mistakes. What can it learn from Brazil in the way in which it does things? It does, from attracting investment into the country, I think because it has a very well understood, let's say on the face of it, a very well understood process how licensing is done, that external financiers get comfortable with that. And that's obviously a very key issue in terms of attracting investment funds, you know, to come in and support businesses, whether they're large multinationals or whether, like Sarabi, they're a small company that is, you know, needs external funding to be able to move its projects forwards. What I would say is, unfortunately, within Brazil, I think there is, perhaps because of the history of it and because of the state ownership of mining projects, Vale in particular, there tends to be not very much knowledge or understanding, in my view, of the mining industry and the bigger mining industry. And I think that's a bit of a barrier which Brazil could unlock more capital to support mining projects internally. It's obviously a very wealthy country, but the money that's tied up in there doesn't seem to be wanting to go and help smaller companies to develop and grow within the country. So I think that's a downside at the moment, and it therefore needs education. And you know, there are agencies, IBRAM in Brazil is very much involved in trying to educate particularly the younger generation into the benefits of mining and the need for mining, emphasizing very strongly what the minerals do for them and how they help their countries move forward, and how essential they are and how essential the mining industry is in terms of everything that everybody uses in an everyday environment. And you know, whilst they might stand there and say, we don't want coal, we don't want this, you have to understand that, you know, until there is a suitable alternative, you have to keep moving forward with these opportunities and need to keep, you know, economies and the wheels of the world turning.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you very much, Clive. We have several questions coming in from on the chat from the audience, so I want to kind of try to address some of those in the few minutes that we have left here. So there's an initial question about coal prospects in Colombia, which is something that Milton has touched on. So the question sort of asks sort of how we're seeing investor appetite for funding coal projects, and I guess you know, maybe we could sort of address both Colombia and then I'll let Milton take the first crack at that one, and also maybe go back to Marcelo for a regional view there. And the question also asks which types of investors could potentially be interested in coal projects. So maybe Milton, if you want to go ahead first and sort of give perspective on Colombia, and then we'll bring Marcelo in.
Well, I could bring a lawyer perspective. However, I think that Carlos maybe could help me with a proper response. Well, you know, it's hard to say if what is going to be the future of coal in terms of its demand. If you see the numbers right now and the expectations for this year, Asia, especially China, is still burning coal, as well Europe. Well, taking into account the energy crisis in Europe, there are some forecasts that announce that the global demand for coal, at least in a near future of 2 or 3 years, is clearly will be in high rates, you know, or at least in terms of growing demand, or at the levels that are currently right now, which are, let's say, good expectations for a coal producer like Colombia. But I couldn't say that this is going to be a continuous tendency in the long-term future. It depends a lot about what is going to happen, especially in Europe, and as well about the appetite for coal in Asia. But as I'm sure Carlos could give you a proper response on this.
Sure. With regards to coal, it's an interesting topic. You have two two types of coal, thermal coal and met coal, with very clear different markets and different perspectives. Historically, met coal has been always had a higher price, but given the current situation in Europe and the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, the appetite of thermal coal has significantly increased, and it has changed dramatically the market. In that sense, it's the first time in history where we have seen thermal coal be more expensive than met coal. And from that perspective, there's a clear definition that as Milton was mentioning, clearly we believe the price will continue to remain relatively high, and the markets will continue to demand the thermal coal. I guess the question was also targeting where are the investors going to come from, and how could we find them. With regards to Colombia, I can say that coal investors are coming from within the country. We have seen acquisitions of some of the main companies coming internally, both for met and for thermal coal, and that gives you a perspective that Colombian investors are still seeing coal as a good investment. And an opportunity to continue producing. So I don't know if that answers the question relatively.
Yes, that's great. Thanks very much, Carlos, for jumping in there. I just want to see Marcelo, if you want to add anything, maybe from a regional perspective on coal in a minute or so.
Oh yes, just building on what Milton and Carlos just said. I think the question is, well, basically the fundamentals are there. There's no doubt about it. You have a price, you have a market. We are also not sure how long it will last. It will depend pretty much on this energy transition base. But the other important question is who are willing to bet, who are willing to put, who are able to invest, because many of the mandates are pretty much restrict and avoiding to allocate capital to coal. Yeah, we can see many big mining companies divesting their coal portfolio, BHP, Vale, and so on. But we also see some niche players who are very willing to take advantage of the situation, of the imbalance. Okay, so we're not saying it's impossible to bring capital to coal. But for sure, you got to be more precise when choosing the pockets you are going to touch.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for the insights there. I want to try to get to 2 or 3 more of the questions from the audience in about the 10 or so minutes that we have left. So there's a question about the current fiscal reform in Colombia, which has been sort of the main sort of domestic policy initiative of the government in the first couple of months, and we've seen that initially the intention of the government was to increase the tax burden on the mining sector as well as oil and gas. There's been sort of some pushback from the more centrist parties in Congress on many of the measures, including some of the measures affecting the mining sector as well as oil and gas. And so we're still waiting sort of the final debates and possible modifications of this bill. But I wanted to turn the question over to Milton, and so maybe you can tell us sort of in your view, what are the main implications of this tax reform project for the mining sector in Colombia, and the questioner specifically asked about coal again. So you can stay with the theme here, and maybe you can give us the general view and then the specific view on coal.
Yeah, the answer is very clear, Theodore. Yes, the two main legal tax reforms that are going to impact and affect the mining industry are that in the future, you cannot deduce or deduct royalties for income tax effects. Yeah. So I think that it will become that Colombia, the first country or mining country in the world where you cannot deduct royalties in regard to income tax calculation. And the second one is the additional 5% or 10% points that you will have to pay taking into account or based in the international price of the commodities in the markets. Of course, these two kind of measures, but especially the one related that you cannot deduct royalties, impact severely the mining industry in Colombia, but specifically, and of course as well, the coal industry. So the answer is yes. These two new legal measures have a direct impact on the competitiveness of the Colombian mining industry for the future.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Milton. And then there is some, just to sort of clarify, there is some differential treatment of coal versus some of the other minerals that sort of the government is perhaps trying to promote. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And just to turn back, we have another question that kind of relates back to our discussion about community relations. And there, the question is about whether sort of the government in Colombia has or is potentially going to explore mechanisms of shared ownership of mining projects with local communities, if that's something that has been on the agenda. So maybe, Milton, you could sort of address that from the Colombian perspective. And then the question also asked about whether there are similar experiences in that vein in Brazil and in other jurisdictions in the region. So maybe we could also bring Clive in after to address that question from the Brazil perspective. But Milton, why don't you go ahead first, please?
Sure. Yes, this is a quite interesting question because so far you don't have much successful experience in terms of sharing the property, or in terms of common ownership of the project with the communities, except in some very specific projects, but related with formalization of, let's say, miners that they don't have like a proper mining license, right? So with the companies, there are some very few successful experiences regarding share ownership. However, it's not the common rule and it's not based on regulation in Colombia. So what we have said more in academic terms is that Colombia should consider as alternative for tax benefit for companies as well, actually in a way to make Colombian mining industry more competitive compared with other countries in the region like Peru and Chile and Brazil as well, to try to define in regulation the possibility to share ownership between companies and communities. And this is actually that might work even better that high taxation, or with this measure related with that you cannot deduct royalties for income tax. Because if you share the project with communities, maybe the final result for wellness for the communities in the regions could be more, let's say, more a reality, than that like is right now, where actually if you don't have an efficient way to spend royalties and taxes that pay companies, at the end the final results and the final benefits for communities in the region, you might not see them in the short term. So the answer is yes, it's a quite interesting proposition and idea to implement in Colombia.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much, Milton. Clive, do you want to address that question? If you have any experience from in the context of Brazil?
Well, I can answer it in terms of how we see it. The Brazilian government imposes different royalty rates on different types of mineral. So I think it's 4% on iron ore, on gross revenues, essentially. We see 2% on copper, 1.5% on gold. And half of that royalty is paid to the state and centrally to the state. And that is essentially used to fund mineral development, or it's paid to the sort of the A&M, the mining agency, to fund continued investment and monitoring procedures for those companies. And the other 50% is paid to the municipality in which the mine is located. So we don't actually have direct community ownership, but essentially the benefits or some of the financial benefit is paid back immediately to that municipality. There are disadvantages to that because I can look at the projects that we operate in Brazil, and in that particular instance, the capital of the municipality in one of those instances is somewhere close to about 600 kilometers away from the actual community that is directly benefiting from it. Oddly enough, to the extent that the community is trying to create its own municipality so that it can become the beneficiary of that income. And so it's not a perfect solution, but there is a solution and there are ways in which it can be dealt with. But clearly, we obviously want to benefit those local communities as much as we can. They're the ones that do impact on us. We provide education, medicine, schooling, and other facilities to them, as well as improvements in infrastructure. But if they could get direct benefit through that royalty, we'd very much like to see that happen.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. That's an interesting experience. I'll stick with you quickly, Clive, and not to put you on the spot, but you were talking about licensing previously, and we have a question asking about the standard time to obtain a license in Brazil. I'm not sure if that's a easily answerable question, but I figured I'd let you have a crack at it.
Yeah, it's not an easily answerable question, I have to say. There are a number of hurdles that can be put in place of that. It will depend on where you are, and we have seen projects. And again, I have to look at the state of Pará, which is up in the north in the Amazon region, or encompasses part of the Amazon region, and that clearly creates its own issues, where you've got indigenous lands, etc., areas of archaeological interest. A number of different factors can all impact on what you need to do and how long that licensing process can take. I'd like to say to somebody, it can take 3 to 4 years. But I've seen mines that operate, the authorities do have a way around it. They provide us with trial mining licenses and sort of trial processing licenses. And I've actually seen a gold mine operate for about 7 or 8 years, and it never had a full operating license. So they found flexible ways to get around their own problems of administering the bureaucracy in some ways, where they just can't get to it. But it will depend on the circumstances, the location, the state where it is, and in some ways just the number of people that you've got. So I can't give a firm timeline. I think it will be much quicker if you're down in Minas Gerais than it will be up in the north of the country.
Okay, great. No, thank you for that. I think that's very helpful, sort of laying out what the different types of factors are that could influence that outcome. But in any event, we're sort of running up against the end of the time for this panel. So I don't want to I don't want to go into the next panel here. So there's a few additional questions, some specific questions that I see in the chat that I think maybe we can try to respond to directly and then follow up with the individual questioner. So I'll just take the opportunity again to thank everyone very much for your participation. Thanks to everyone who asked questions in the chat. And of course, thank you very much, Clive, Milton, and then Marcelo for participating in the panel. It was very, very insightful and an interesting discussion. I think we covered a broad range of issues and hope it was of interest to everyone in the audience as well.
Thank you, Theodore.
Thank you, Theodore.
Thank you, Theodore.
Thank you, everybody, and for all the panelists for the useful insights. We are now moving on to welcome Carlos Barrera from the mining consultancy, John Lloyd's. Carlos, welcome. Carlos, you might be on mute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure this out. Give me a second. Something happened. I think I clicked the wrong button. Thank you for your time and the invitation. The plan today is to have a short presentation and share one of our products that we have presented. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, but if you can put the slideshow, yeah, that's much better.
All right, super. Just wanted to let you know that thank you to the British Colombian Chamber for the invitation, and the plan today is to have share with you one of the publications that we have that it's called the Colombian Mining Pipeline. This is a shared publication between our company, John T. Boyd, and Jaime Arteaga and Asociados, which is a local consultancy firm specialized in the development of projects in different industries. Our pipeline is basically a product that has all the projects that are in the exploration phase, and you will see throughout this short presentation how we have organized the projects into a specific method, following a methodology, and you'll be able to see and have access to this document. It is a public document. We will share it with the attendees, and you'll be able to download it from our website also. We have completed this publication with the support of many local companies and also with the help of the Colombian government, the mining agency, and the ministry, in addition to other companies that have helped us gather the information that was required. Just to let you know how we did this project, we basically started the collection of publicly available data, and we followed that with the definition of a methodology to be able to classify the projects appropriately. We use the FBL methodology, front-end loading, which is the most traditional methodology used to be able to compress and verify in terms of high investment or high capital investment projects. We followed that with the creation of a database. We then spoke, we did a call for projects, we validated with project owners, and we updated the information. it must be said, however, that we had to cut at some point, and so we decided to do this at the beginning of the year, and we launched the pipeline during PDAC in Toronto this year, and we're hoping to have a new version with analysis as to how the projects have evolved, if they have evolved, and what's been needed from the authorities in terms of new actions or call for actions for the projects to advance. So from that perspective, you will see that we have divided the projects, and just to be clear, we are not looking here at projects that are in production. We're exclusively looking at projects that are in exploration, that have not started production. And this is key because this is the pipeline of projects that will later on become the producing assets of Colombia. Some of them will, clearly. What we're trying to do is define a series of steps that are traditionally taken by exploration and mining companies to advance their projects. And so we have divided them into initial exploration, pre-feasibility, feasibility, and basic engineer, detail engineering, and construction. So the projects that you will see right now are divided within those 5 stages, and you'll be able to understand how we have advanced with them. As I mentioned before, one note, just a brief comment to let you know that we believe there are more projects than the ones that we have identified, but there's a couple of things that makes it complex to be able to include the projects within this methodology. First of all, some of the projects that you have seen or that you will see in Colombia, traditionally people or project owners like to advance the project into production as soon as possible, and they don't go through the process of exploration. This is changing with the arrival of junior companies and other companies that see the value in exploration. But traditionally, you would normally find a lot of projects that would jump immediately or as soon as possible, they would jump into production, skipping a key phase of the project, which is the exploration phase. And so from that perspective, some of the projects have jumped to production, even though they have not completed their exploration phases. So hopefully this number of 52 projects in exploration phase will increase in the new version of our pipeline coming up next year, hopefully for PDAC also sometime in March. And we will be able to complement. So if you have any projects that you would like to add, or if your project has advanced in any way, you can contact us and we will update it immediately. You have 52 projects in total in Colombia. Out of those projects, you have 48% of them are for gold. And you see in the presentation how they are divided in terms of initial exploration, pre-feasibility, feasibility, detailed engineering, and construction. So a large percentage of the projects are focused in gold, not so much in silver. We do have some projects in thermal coal. We have some of the projects in met coal, which is important for the industry, especially in the interior of Colombia, in the Boyacá, Cundinamarca, and North Santander regions. And we also have copper projects that are advancing, and which is very important for the transition, for the energy transition. And so you can see an array of projects in different stages and how they are advancing. And you'll be able to see during the document, we also have a project in rare earth, so that's well received. If you can conceive this as a pyramid, where the lower part is in the initial exploration and towards the top you have the construction, you will see that most of the projects are at the bottom, at the base of the pyramid, and some of them will gradually make it all the way up. Some of them will not, for different reasons. I don't know, investment, the size of the project, the location, difficulties, environmental complexities, or any other difficulties, but ultimately some of them will advance. Same case here, you'll be able to find the projects that are in pre-feasibility and you'll be able to see how they are advancing later on as we do the analysis of how the projects go through the process. At the top of the pyramid, you will see the ones that are in construction, which are the ones that are fully licensed and will be able to achieve production in relatively short term. So this is the pipeline of projects that Colombia has right now. We believe, as I mentioned before, there are more projects, and we would like to have more of your projects added to the pipeline. So if you have any ones that you would like to be added, please contact us, and we will be happy to include them. We have a basic form that needs to be required to be completed. Within the document, you'll be able to see the details of the projects in terms of the ownership, the name of the project, the location, the mining method, and the main mineral that they are intending to exploit. And within those, you'll see some stars of some of the projects that we have highlighted because we have more information, or the company has provided more detail, and you'll be able to see more specific information of each of those projects. So as you go through the document, you'll be able to identify the projects in the various stages. This one is pre-feasibility, feasibility, detailed engineering, and construction. I think I'm running out of time, but you'll be able to download this, the whole document, which is a comprehensive document of around 65 pages with all the details of the projects as much as we can. You'll be able to download the information, the presentation and the document from our website, or you can scan the QR code. Thank you.
I was on mute. Thank you, Carlos, for that. A very comprehensive research on the current mining assets in Colombia. So thank you. And if you agree, we will, we will share also the link to all participants, and of course include your contact details. So if anybody has any questions, they can approach you directly.
Absolutely.
And so we are now welcoming Oscar, from partner at Palacio Lleras, and the rest of the panelists. So please join us. And over to you, Oscar.
Gracias. Buenos días para quienes nos escuchan y ven desde Colombia o otras partes de América. Buenas tardes para las personas en Londres y en Europa. Muchas gracias. Agradecemos a la Cámara Británica Colombiana de Comercio por la invitación a este panel sobre minería. Tengo el gusto de compartir hoy la palabra con 4 excelentes panelistas. Por un lado está Christopher Harris, él es el director de Hexa Resources. Es una empresa que se enfoca en la exploración, extracción y mercadeo de piedras preciosas, en especial esmeraldas. Ahora en un momento nos hablará un poco más de su compañía y de la experiencia de esta empresa en Colombia. Phil Spencer es fundador y director de London Diamond, que también se encarga de piedras preciosas y también de esmeraldas. También nos acompañará Nicolás López Correa, gerente de asuntos corporativos de Córdoba Minerals, que tiene una experiencia importante por contarnos acerca de las minas de cobre en Colombia también. Y por último nos acompañará Brett Matish, CEO y presidente de Max Resource Corporation, que también tiene unas minas y unos proyectos mineros de cobre en Colombia y en Perú. Entonces, pues, sin más preámbulos, quisiera comentarles a quienes nos escuchan y nos están viendo en este momento que uno de los grandes objetivos del mundo y en Colombia también es la denominada transición energética. Y también en el marco de esta transición energética, uno de los grandes retos que tienen las empresas mineras y los gobiernos es transmitir beneficios sociales a las comunidades locales en donde se asientan estos proyectos. La transición energética, entendida como unos cambios en los modelos de producción, distribución y consumo de energía para aminorar las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero, está generando nuevos retos. Y en este proceso, aunque hay minerales que se verán afectados, hay muchos otros, como es el caso del cobre, del litio y otros minerales, también van a jugar un papel muy importante en esta transición. Entonces, sea esta la oportunidad para pedirles a nuestros panelistas que nos ilustren un poco acerca de las experiencias que cada uno tiene de ellos. Y me gustaría comenzar por Phil, Phil Spencer. Quisiera
Hi, good
preguntarle...
afternoon or good morning.
Hola, Phil. Quisiera preguntarte si nos puedes explicar un poco sobre la compañía London Diamond y Emerald y cuáles son los beneficios sociales que la compañía y los beneficios sociales y ambientales de la compañía en sus proyectos.
Yeah, sure. Hello and welcome to everyone joining this talk. So I'm the founder of London D, which is London Diamond and Emerald Fine Jewelry. We're based in Hatton Garden in London. We also have an operation in Bogota, Colombia, and we also trade out of the DMCC in Dubai. We specialize in fine jewelry with a focus on diamonds and emeralds, and also the supply of gold. We've been operating in Colombia now for about 2 years from an office in the Emerald District. And yeah, one of our key attributes is the fact that we focus very heavily on responsible sourcing. So although we're not directly involved in the mining process, we do take a keen interest in what goes on in those mining regions, and we have a very clear policy on the sourcing of ethical, conflict-free, and sustainably sourced raw material. We are at the moment going through our audit process for the RJC, the Responsible Jewellery Council, which is a body in the UK that focuses on the assurance of ethical standards along supply chains. So that's something that we're intricately involved in on a day-to-day basis. And in fact, we have to have a full audit later this month in London, followed by a further audit of what we're doing in Colombia in the early part of next year, ahead of a deadline in March. So we're heavily involved in that on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's something that the consumers demand these days. It's something that's a very important part of our marketing and our engagement with our customers and stakeholders, that they want to see that things have been sourced properly and in a fair and sustainable way.
Muchas gracias, Phil. Quisiera ahora preguntarle a Nicolás. Nicolás nos acompaña de la compañía Córdoba Minerals, que es una empresa enfocada en la exploración, desarrollo y adquisición de proyectos de cobre en Colombia. Quisiera que por favor nos contara un poco sobre el proyecto que están desarrollando en Colombia y por qué este proyecto, a juicio de ustedes, marca un hito en el desarrollo actual y en relación con el nuevo gobierno.
Hi, Oscar, and everyone in Europe, and good morning here to the people in Colombia. Córdoba Minerals Corp it's a company that has projects in Colombia, but also in Arizona, in US. That's an early stage project, and here in Colombia we have our San Matias project that includes 23 mining concessions that covers around 50,000 hectares, and another 82,000 hectares additional in 49 mining claims that we are waiting for them to be conceded. Our main project, San Matias, will start with this main pit, El Alacrán, that covers almost 500 hectares. and that has an influence in 6 small communities in the municipality of Puerto Libertador, which is located in the state of Córdoba, in the central east area of Colombia. It's not far from Medellin or another big city such as Monteria. We're finalizing our feasibility study and also the detailed engineering aspects of the project. We already presented the claim for the mining authorization, which is called PTO, waiting for them to concede it. And we're about to present the Estudio de Impacto Ambiental, the environmental impact study, next we think next March 2023, and based on the times we expect to have, we think 1 year after presenting the environmental impact study, we will have the environmental license, so that will guide us to the mining construction. And not being quite optimistic, we think at the end of 2026, early 2027, we would be producing copper concentrate. Our project so far have we have in estimated resources and inferred around 470,000 tons of copper, almost 1 million ounces of gold, and around almost 9 million ounces of silver. So in terms of what it represents for the country, that will be the biggest copper project in production in this, like what we can call the modern mining industry in Colombia. But for the world context, this is not like this big, and not even for the group that owns most of the company, which is Ivanhoe Electric, that is very well known in the world for working and discovering in copper projects. But we think we can extend this project for a bigger production, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we have another 23 mining concessions in this district, in this project that is called San Matias, and we also have advanced exploration in other satellite pits, in other 4 satellite pits. So we think we can extend the life of this mine, but also we have received very good information from these additional drillings we're making for engineering in the main area of the main pit. So we think at some point we will be able to find the body of the porphyry, and that's very interesting. And we don't find any reasons for this project not to be like the one of the most important signs for the mining industry, to keep looking for big copper deposits in Colombia. The geological situation of Colombia in the continent is quite interesting. It's an underexplored country, and in the years to come, this project will be very important, not just because it's going to be the first in copper, but also because it's going to be the first mining project presenting the environmental impact study to be studied in order to have the environmental license, and being copper one of the key minerals for the energy transition, that will put in like, let's say, in trial the idea and the policy of this current government of Colombia, for knowing if their will is actually to have this kind of mining projects running and moving through production. So that's why I think this project will be the milestone of the modern mining industry in this current government of Colombia.
Gracias, Nicolás. Muy importante este proyecto para Colombia y para la transición energética. Quisiera regresar al tema de las esmeraldas y para ello contar con la participación de Christopher. Agradecemos si Christopher nos cuenta un poco acerca de Exa Resources, su papel en Colombia y cómo sus proyectos pueden contribuir a la transición energética y a los beneficios sociales en las comunidades locales donde se están desarrollando estos proyectos de esmeraldas.
Sure. Hi, I'm Chris Harris. I'm the CEO of Exa Resources. We are an exploration, mining and trading emerald business, UK-based. Our main operations are in Colombia and in Brazil. With Colombia, we have two operating areas around the Cosquez old mine. And in Brazil, we are looking to close on a large world-class mine at the moment. So in Colombia, we basically, I would say that we're in exploration trial mining phase on our most advanced one. And so we're beginning to see experience well, firstly, the energy transition. And of course, we've seen firsthand the interaction with the community. So looking at the energy transition, basically, we are looking firstly at, like everyone else, shifting from diesel to mainline for our operations, just really in terms of stability, but also in terms of clean air. Secondly, we're looking at the idea of bringing in solar PV to basically cover the baseload parts of mine operation. You need a lot of solar to kind of underwrite mining power, but I'm very strongly driven by the idea of trying to produce emeralds with green power. So you end up with green emeralds effectively. But very much feel part of this energy move in Colombia, with this global energy move towards a cleaner future. So with the solar PV side, we are talking to a company called SolarPack, which has containerized solar. And what happens is you bring in about 100 kilowatts of power. You can have water pumps, water filters, and battery attached. What do they do for the community? They really can be left with the community. They can strengthen the community grid. So they bring absolute value to the community. Just looking a little bit at some of the questions around the energy transition and mining resources, I think there's a very difficult balancing act to play between the responsibility, I think, of the country in terms of exploiting its capable mining wealth, mining and petroleum, versus the equal responsibility of moving to a better energy position, a cleaner energy position. And I think what you need for that is a very clear strategy to develop. There will be limits in terms of how far you can go in terms of any transition on each area. And the country needs to look very carefully at not discouraging miners from coming in, giving them the ability to have a duration of time to get recovery, to be able to come in and exploit some of these resources that are in there. It remains a complex area, and that discussion is happening all over the world. But for example, there are large demand areas. If you take coal, for example, there's some large demand areas in Southeast Asia, India, China, which will use a fair amount of coal for the foreseeable future, even though they are themselves transitioning. And so it is all about allocating resources efficiently globally. Now, what does this all do for the community? We have a very strong community focus. I think the main principle here is, as soon as you're generating revenue, There is a requirement and, of course, a desire from us to be putting money back into that local community. And a mining entity really brings, what does it bring to the community? It brings employment, it brings skilling up, it brings, generating skills to the community so they can themselves go out and do the same thing. It brings education in that a lot of the projects that the good mining player will be looking to develop education, housing, etc. And so, we have a loose relationship with clay hands, and we are looking to, once we're producing, get involved in various projects along that line, mainly in the housing side. So very much, there is a responsibility of the miner and the local community to interact with the people, to have them on its side, to explain to them what it's doing, and bring them for the journey. And so, I welcome this whole phase of a greater involvement here. That's pretty much it from me.
Muchas gracias, Christopher. Por último,
Thank you.
en esta primera ronda quisiera darle la palabra a Brett. Brett es parte de la compañía Max Resources, que es una compañía que cotiza, entiendo, en la Bolsa de Valores en Canadá y tiene proyectos en cobre. En Colombia, agradecería si Brett, por favor, nos cuenta un poco acerca de los proyectos que tiene en Colombia y cómo contribuye la empresa a la transición energética y cuáles beneficios va a traer el proyecto para las comunidades locales.
Hi, my name's Brett Maddich. I'm CEO of Max Resource. We're a Canadian listed company on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We've been in Colombia for over 3 years. Our focus is the Caesar Copper Project, which is in Northeast Colombia. So we are early stage, high risk copper exploration. It's the first time that there has been any scale of copper exploration in this region. I don't know if you can see the can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're in we're in far northeast Colombia. This area is one of the largest coal producing areas and oil and gas. The communities depend on royalties from fossil fuels. There's a huge amount of infrastructure. There's railway lines, shipping ports, all the major infrastructure required for major mining operations. Being copper, the environmental footprint is a lot smaller than coal. And we've been involved with the community now for over 2.5 years. It's a focus, and the reason we went in this area because of the transition of Colombia, even prior to the government that's in now, that are more aggressive, moving from fossil fuels to clean energy transition. We have 60 full-time employees. 95% of our employees are from the Colombian community. We have a big belief in involving the Colombian community in socialization, environmental management, not just geology. Our employees are predominantly very young. We have a number of them that have come out of the Geology University in Medellin, and so we're teaching them skills. But our focus is not only copper, but as I said, the environmental and socialization management. So we've been here, so like I said, 2.5 years. We have 21 mining concessions covering an area of around 188 square kilometers. And we are currently moving forward into our first drilling program, specifically targeting copper. So as I said, we're early stage exploration in Colombia. As a junior company, we spent around $10 million. Currently, we have around $20 million in the bank, 30% of our shareholding is by financial institutions. We have relationships with major mining companies around the world. And effectively, we're acting like what normally happens is the majors want the junior companies to come in and do the early high-risk exploration. We're more nimble, we can move a lot quicker. So that's really basically what we're about. And we're in an area that is being how would you say, being helped by the current government. So and I think from what we talked to in relation to where Colombia is heading with the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy, that is our focus. And we're in an area that is one of the largest fossil fuel producers in Colombia. And the newly elected Colombian Minister for Mines has clearly said that, and in this particular case, that they are harnessing the potential of copper. Currently, Colombia is a very small copper producer, but the potential, which has to be focused by junior companies in copper exploration, is really where you're going to find the potential of proving out those copper deposits. So is there any questions at all?
Gracias, Fred. Invitamos al público en general, si tiene preguntas, nos las envíe a través del chat. Mientras tanto, pasemos un momento a unas preguntas rápidas y empezamos de pronto por los dos grupos, las dos panelistas que están más relacionados con el tema de esmeraldas. Quisiera preguntarle primero a Christopher si de lo que ha visto en su experiencia internacional en los países donde se ha implementado lo que denominamos la transición energética, ello implica una disminución de las utilidades, del lucro económico de las empresas.
Yes, I think that it's a complicated subject, but I've seen from seen in what I've read internationally that applying the energy transition will reduce, will increase costs at the front end. But often what we're finding with the bigger, especially the bigger open pit kind of operations, is as you, and underground, as you electrify, as you simplify operation, you start to reduce costs. So there is a longer term gain for miners to do this. And you're seeing that more and more, I think a lot in Australia, and, maybe Brett can talk a little bit about this, but I think the industry will speed up really in its transition as it realizes that there is a potential commercial benefit down the line. So that's the important point here. There needs to be support and help, I think, from the government in doing this. In other words, some type of tax support or assistance, or for those who do take a green path, would be appreciated. And that's certainly what we would look for. But in our project, we're looking to try and do that. No, not just importantly to sort of not just for the community in the area and for what we stand for, but also I think that the buyers of our emeralds will want to know that they've been produced in a clean and conscious way, and it just ties into that narrative.
Yes, it's no question, especially over the last.
La misma pregunta, perdón. ¿Alguien iba a hablar? Perdón, la misma pregunta para Phil, en el sentido de si en el sector de las joyerías, las piedras preciosas, han encontrado que el énfasis que se da ahora en la transición energética ha implicado cambios en la industria, cambios en las utilidades del negocio, o cómo se ha adaptado la industria a esta situación.
Okay,
so I think it ties in very closely. Yeah, people do expect that the items they're buying, whatever commodity they may be, they expect that they've come through a clean supply chain. I think that that's also part and parcel of local sourcing, wherever possible. Manufacturing locally is also a bonus. The days of outsourcing from one part of the world to another and back again 3 or 4 times in some cases, I think has obviously an enormous carbon footprint and can be quite detrimental to the overall effort to reduce our impact on the environment. So I think it runs through the whole supply chain. I think there's a lot of synergy there between environmental standards and also labor relations and supporting local communities in their efforts to develop and to receive some of the benefits from the actual commodities that they're engaged with working in. So I think for a long time there was a lot of foreign investment that was focused on simply extracting things from areas, removing one commodity from one place and passing it to another where the value would be added somewhere else. So I think that there's definitely been a shift to the local level to ensure that there's a fair distribution of benefits around the whole community, and that ties in very closely with the transition to renewable energy and to sort of sustainable and more longer term balance in terms of how we interact with local communities and with their surrounding environments.
If I could add to that just very quickly, just from the gem space, is look, what the buyers want is transparency. They want to know that what they're seeing in front of them in a beautiful ring has been produced in a proper way. They want to know the story. They want to know all about that source. And that's just very true of the millennials and really all the other layers, I think, more and more. And so that energy transition is just part of that changing story. It's part of that touchstone that's really quite important. So for us, it's very, very important to be aware of it and to want to change it. And then, of course, that's what we're doing.
So just to add to that,
Christopher, gracias.
I'd say just to add to that, I mean, the focus nowadays, especially with modern exploration and major mining companies now, is that socialization and with the community and environmental is now taking a front seat position. And that's really important. I mean, it's not just about geology anymore. And that's what we found, that was our focus when we moved here to Northeast Colombia. I mean, you got to have the focus. Look, you got to work with the community. There's positives there. And we went to this particular area because of the dependence on mining and fossil fuels, giving an alternative, bringing in copper exploration and any type of mineral exploration. I think it needs to be understood that it's high risk and takes many, many years, but that is the foundation of any deposit. We're talking copper deposits in anywhere in the world. The foundation is exploration, but there is a lot of risk involved. And look, you really got to work in with the community. So as I said, socialization, community, environmental is now right at the front door for all major respected mining companies in the world.
Gracias, Brett. Quisiera hacerle un par de preguntas a las dos panelistas que están de las empresas de cobre, a Nicolás y a Brett, precisamente, y en relación con unas preguntas que nos ha enviado el público. Rápidamente, si nos pudieran decir lo siguiente: los proyectos de cobre que ustedes están desarrollando, ¿tienen perspectivas de exportación o también tendrán consumo o envíos internos para transformación en Colombia, o están enfocados solamente en exportaciones? Y también nos preguntan cuál ha sido la experiencia en cuanto a las licencias ambientales. Si nos pudieran contar muy brevemente ambos temas. Empiezo tal vez, Nicolás.
Yes, Oscar. Our project is meant to export all the production because due to the quite small production of copper concentrate that exists right now in Colombia, there's no there's no enough production to have a smelter for refining copper, and in the midterm we think we're not going to have the amount that economically justify a installation of a copper smelter. And then we have to say that that's part of the panorama that we want to present to the Colombian government, is to say that our interest is to have in mid long term a copper production in Colombia for using the Colombian copper in the Colombian industry. But for that, we will need to have a lot of copper production mines running. And I think it's not economically possible to have copper smelters right now. So we're going to export the whole production of the copper concentrate. And then in the other hand, we have to say that for the other question, we have to say that the environmental license for us is unknown. We have to say that the términos de referencia, the reference terms that National Agency for Environmental License is quite big, is quite ambiguous. It's like gray, because that gives a lot of space for interpretation for the officers of that office. So we think so far we think we can our environmental standards and the studies we're making to present the environmental impact study is very well prepared, and we think we're gonna fill all the requirements, but we don't have like a clear space of time and or specific kind of technical interpretation of the requirements of the government, because we've seen the same thing being understood and interpreted in different ways in different projects. So we hope we will be able to have the environmental license in 1 year, because we've been working really hard and seeing the past experience of the of other projects such as Quebradona and, for example, Gramalote, which is gold but has a lot of similarities with Colombia.
Ok, gracias, Nicolás. No sé si Brett nos quiera dar brevemente unas respuestas a esas dos preguntas.
So was that a question to me?
Gracias, Brett. Son dos preguntas. Si la producción de cobre de las minas de ustedes será para exportación o también habrá consumo colombiano, y cuál ha sido la experiencia de la compañía en las licencias ambientales.
Sorry, I couldn't understand the question.
Gracias. Que si la producción de cobre de Max Resource será solo para exportación o también para importación, para consumo interno, perdón. Y la segunda sobre las licencias ambientales, la experiencia de la compañía. Sí, sí lo sabes.
Sorry, if you're talking, I can't understand the question.
Brett, I'll explain. I think that the first question that Oscar is asking is if all your production will go to the domestic market, or are you planning to export? And the second one is if you can share with the audience your experience getting environmental licenses for your projects.
Okay, So Max Resource, we're an exploration company, early stage. We're not a mining company. So we're an exploration company. We do have relationships with major mining companies, and we act as a normal junior company. We come in, junior companies come in early, high risk. Junior companies can move a lot faster than larger mining companies. So in relation to the mining side, that's not what we do. In relation to the environmental side, yes, we have to do an environmental regional survey for exploration. We have completed that environmental survey. We are currently drilling, and this is the first time that any company has drilled for copper. Prior to drilling, one of the loopholes, one of the things we have to do, first of all, approve of a mining concession. Part of the approval of a mining concession, we have to have what we call a public hearing to the community. So that's the step of a mining concession. Another part, besides the regional environmental survey, to drill, you need to have communication with the community. You need to have agreements with the underlying landholders, which we do. And then finally, we have an environmental inspection. So we've had an environmental inspection prior to our first drilling program, which started a month or so ago. We've recently had another environmental inspection. So with an environmental inspection, the environmental department send a representative to inspect what we're doing in relation to with our exploration. We have very low impact. We don't have any large environmental disturbance. And to do that, we have what you call these very portable drill rigs. So we break up the drill rigs, we carry the actual drill rigs to the drilling point. So just to sort of rehash on that, yes, we do go through environmental stages to drill, but we are not a mining company.
Ok, muchas gracias, Fred. Nos han enviado una pregunta que quisiera formularles a todos en relación con cómo ve la compañía el impacto que está teniendo los cambios en la legislación tributaria. Entonces, no sé si Christopher o Phil puedan alguno de los dos comentar al respecto sobre qué saben, qué han escuchado, si les preocupa a sus empresas los cambios que se han anunciado por parte del Congreso y el Gobierno de Colombia en relación con la reforma tributaria, y también para Nicolás y Brett más adelante. No sé si Phil y Christopher puede alguno de los dos comenzar o decir algo al respecto.
Well, I'm just I'm waiting for everything to clarify. I think that the emerald business has always had a sort of artisanal and understanding level of taxation, really, because emerald mining is a hard business. You know, one or two productions in a year would be a good thing. So you know, we would hope that the tax environment remains supportive of you know, of this particular type of mining business. That would be our position here. I can understand that taxes is an intention of increasing taxes, and I think that there is always a balance in these things, because what we want to see is growth and generation of wealth for the people of this country. So very important.
I think it's interesting what may happen in terms of what Petro does to personal taxes as well. So I think it could have a very profound effect on the luxury goods market, certainly in places like Cartagena, where there's a burgeoning market for that. Yeah, and obviously more directly, what will also happen in terms of the taxation on the mining industry and the effect that could then have downstream, which is being compounded by the current sort of slow rate of production with emeralds in particular in the country at the moment.
Ok. Ahora, en relación con el cobre, tal vez las compañías de exploración pueden estar más afectadas con el tema de la deducibilidad de las regalías. No sé si Brett y Nicolás tengan alguna opinión respecto del efecto de la reforma tributaria.
Oscar, I think we'll have to wait. As Christopher mentioned, we need everything to be clarified. And of course, we're concerned and our investors are concerned because the numbers would be affected. I mean, the feasibility itself of the project would be affected depending on the result of the tax reform. So we would like to wait, but of course we are concerned and we will have to wait and see the result of the reform.
Gracias, Brett.
So with the tax reform, again, we're a mineral exploration company. It's something that we'll have awareness about, but it doesn't affect us at this stage. But yes, we'll definitely be contributing to communication in relation to changes.
Gracias. Creo que Christopher iba a añadir algo.
Sorry, just that question again, sorry.
No, Christopher creo que quería añadir algo en relación con la régimen.
About the taxation side, you mean, or about the taxation side?
Correcto, a los impuestos.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, Brett is basically an explorer. So all this is doing is impacting the economic model that he's moving towards. So it's much less direct. So look, for us, we would like to stay with the current level of taxations on production. I think that really the argument has to be made that at least for the emerald mining industry, where there's a lot of mining risk, i.e. a lot of effort can be made for low result and low product, then one has to be a little easier on the taxation of that, so that investors, be they local, be they foreign, can recover their funds. This is also an ancient mining industry. Emerald's been mined here for 500 plus years. And, one thing that you'll find Phil and I are very fervent about is keeping the downstream parts of this industry alive and strong in Colombia. So the emerald market in Bogota is key. It is key that we cut emeralds in Bogota. It's key that these features of the market are maintained. Very, very important. And so I think when you start to tax at different levels, you start to sort of drive economic reactions from miners. And I would just say in that, it's important to remember that, Phil and I are selling, the whole story of Colombian emeralds, this ancient, produced from ancient times, the whole stages of creating a cut emerald today, which sits on your ring. And it's very important that those stages are preserved within Colombia. It's just important in terms of our marketing and really in terms of the industry as a whole. That's I think would be my statement here.
Ok, muchas gracias. No sé si tenemos tiempo de una última pregunta. En este panel pues nos están escuchando personas de Colombia, de las agencias del Estado, las agencias de minería. ¿Cuál sería el mensaje de ustedes sobre qué necesita el país para lograr realizar una minería bien hecha, minería que apoye las comunidades locales y una minería que contribuya a la transición energética? No sé si alguno tenga como algunos puntos que de lo que ha visto de su experiencia en Colombia pueda considerar que se deben mejorar, regulaciones que se deban hacer. Sabemos, por ejemplo, que en el campo de las esmeraldas, la agencia de minería ha venido trabajando en unas guías de buenas prácticas de la esmeralda, lo mismo en cobre y en otros minerales. ¿Qué le hace falta al país para lograr fomentar la minería en estos materiales que son importantes para la transición energética? No sé
I could
si...
say a few things.
Okay,
I've been
Christopher.
here a few years. I think firstly, the A&M is an exemplary structure. I've been in mining areas around the world, and I think the mining law here is very good and clear. And I think in terms of promoting more miners to want to come to Colombia and mine, I think what you need to have is stability of law, which you see in here. This is the operation of the A&M, the operation of law. You want to have fiscal stability, which is kind of what we're talking about now, which is stable tax regime for people to know that they can come and invest significant amounts of money. You've got Brett's company looking to spend quite a bit of money on exploration to prove up really what could be the next big source of wealth for Colombians. These guys, we need to know that there will be a stable treatment of that product when it finally reaches the point of being produced. So stable tax regime. And I think in terms of energy transition, I think it's a thing that everyone is looking at around the world, and it's very, very important to us and to our children. But what does need to happen is the government needs to have clear messaging in terms of strategy and provide assistance to the industry to help it execute that. You'll find that miners will, where possible, put in these features through their own ethos, their own ethics, and also through the fact that there may well be ways of actually creating savings through this new type energy. But generally speaking, that requires a front-end investment. And so there needs to be help from government in enabling that. So sorry, I think I probably talked rather a lot here, but those are my views. And I think as long as Colombia shows that it is in the forefront of these and creates the stability in those areas, I think that it will be more and more seen as a location for new miners to come to. I mean, there are areas, significant areas under exploration here. This is a country of real potential, and I think we need to create the right framework to allow that to blossom. Thank you.
Well, I think also it certainly helped in terms of the emerald and gold trade, particularly in Colombia, is if they streamlined the application process and the processing of CI, the export licenses. As I understand, there's quite a long backlog with that at the moment, and it's quite a costly process, quite an involved process. I know that Pro Colombia have done some work on a, I believe it was called a junior CI, a simplified cut down version, but removing some of the bureaucracy when it comes to the export process would I think be beneficial, as would also the transport infrastructure for those who've been up to the mining regions, particular places like Muso, Cosquez, Chivor and so forth. The road infrastructure around there is very much dilapidated. So I think improvements in that would be a significant boost to the local economy in general, and obviously by virtue of that, you'd also improve the conditions for all sorts of economic activity and mining operations as well.
Just to add a point as well, I mean, stability is the big thing. I mean, from exploration and mining, there needs to be some type of stability. Definitively. I mean, one of the standouts actually of Colombia is Colombia have never ever repatriated a mining concession. I mean, that's a big thing, which has happened in other South American countries. So that's a huge positive. And if Colombia can continue on and be definitive of what's happening in the future, because major companies They come in, they're not just looking geology, socialization, environmental, but also security, because they're looking at, can we come in here and mine? There's a huge, for a major mining company to come into a country, it's a massive step. You can imagine, you can sort of look at it as like they're nearly a small country themselves. So it's a massive step. It takes them a long time to get into the country. And that's why junior companies, we have a huge role. But once they're in there, they're in there for a long time. So, and one of the, like I said, stability and definitive on the policies of the government is a huge thing for those major mining companies.
Gracias, Brett. Nicolás.
Well, I would have to agree with everything that Brett, Christopher, and Phil said, because you just check the rule of law before investing in the political and stability of law taxation frame. But at the end, I think one of the key issues that I've seen in the stage we are at right now is that the environmental regulation for obtaining the environmental license is quite ambiguous right now. And I think when you're in the point we are right now, you don't know if you're doing it according to what they will interpret of the law, but you're doing your best, or environmental and social standards abroad are even higher than here in Colombia. But everything is so gray that you don't know what would be the result of the claim for the environmental license. So that's one of the things I think has to change in Colombia, and to be more objective in order to anticipate the result of a claim for the environmental license, I would say. But the rest is just a matter of advancing. Every time a mining company establishes here in Colombia, the government has more commitment with this sector, and I think we are seeing that right now. The tax income of the government, the royalties they're receiving, is an important part of the public budget. So I think they have to consider our positions in order to change the law, the taxation in Colombia, and I think we're moving forward. We will see the result of this reform, but I would say the environmental legislation for the environmental license, it's quite sensitive right now.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Nicolás. Debido al tiempo, pues debemos terminar. Hay un par de preguntas del público que quedaron pendientes, las procuraremos contestar por correo. Y les quisiera dar las gracias por participar en este panel. Sé que el tiempo fue breve para poder explicar todas las experiencias y las perspectivas de cada una de las empresas de ustedes en estos temas tan interesantes de minería, transición energética y beneficios a la comunidad. Pues sin más, quiero darle las gracias en nombre de la Cámara y el mío propio. Muchísimas gracias, y le doy la palabra a Claudia, que va a continuar a continuación.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Claudia Ruiz Graham, founder of Human Reality. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm going to be coughing a little bit, so please bear with me. I'm going to be talking about technology and the challenges that industry faces and how technology is helping with that. Let me just share my screen. Right, let me put this on presentation. So I was saying So I'm the founder of Image Reality. I'm a geologist by background. We are a UK company that develops immersive technologies for collaborative data integration in 3D space. We were born in the oil and gas industry, but we're helping geologists and engineers in energy mining and engineering. So I'd like to start talking about, challenges that industries are facing. And I think these are very, very common to both oil and gas and to mining. And we actually heard many of those challenges today during the panels. The first one is that there is an increased need to understand the planet, its resources, and the impact of human activity. And now, with the advent of drone technology, it's very easy to map out landscapes and geology and, bring it to the office, enabling geologists and engineers to access difficult areas and to enable more people to see more of the field. The challenge number two, and we hear about it today, is the communication breakdown between industries and communities. The industries, are perceived as, focusing on generating revenue, generating profit, and not, very, interested in preserving the environment and so on and so forth. And we have seen the impact of that today, with the challenge to attract investment and also with the need to actually engage properly the communities to have the license to operate. This is an example of a recent publication in The Guardian, where there was a note talking about how oil and gas companies have been banned from this university, Birkbeck University, from the Career Advice Service, which is quite a shame. I was raised in the industry, and I know the impact that industry and investment can do in the advancements of technology and the upscaling of the local communities, and also in creating better practices. The challenge number three is that we see, how the organizational capability building is chronically out of sync with economic cycles. And what do I mean by that? During economic downturn, industries tend to restructurate, experienced people leave organizations without having enough time to transfer the skills to the younger generations. Then in the upturn of the economic cycle, recruitment starts, but you get the same, a reduced number of experienced people and not enough time to train and develop the younger generation. So part of that knowledge is lost, and the industries keep repeating that cycle. That translates into sometimes poorer interpretations, poorer geological observations, and poorer decision making that at the end is going to impact capital return. There is also a need to connect expertise across the world and to improve the effectiveness of communication across multidisciplinary teams. We need to reduce the carbon footprint on traveling, but at the same time, there is a need to communicate and connect the expertise across different regions. Imagine that you have your mines in different parts of the world, and you need to be able to connect that expertise in the areas where you operate. The challenge number 5 is that we seem to be drowning in data, and more recently in data silos, increasingly in 3D. Data tends to be, it's not that easy to integrate data. And if decisions are taken into isolation and without a proper data integration, that it takes organizations to poorer decision making. So how do we help? Technology is at hand and in the help. With virtual reality, we are helping to build a metaverse for geoscience, helping organizations to communicate complex environments for better decision making, risk reduction, and better capital return. How? Well, let me show you this a little video clip on here. When you are in virtual reality, you are able to experience the terrains at real scales. The brain thinks in 3D. So you can bring together terrain models, bring together different data sets in a single space, and collaborate with others. It makes you very easy to communicate to your key stakeholders. So let me go back to here. Imagine that you want to explain to your community your mining project or your operations. You can go very easily from satellite imagery, get your community representatives around this technology to help you explain, the impact of your operations. At the same time, integrating different data sets. So if we, in terms of the challenge of capability building and connecting expertise across the world, this is an example of using immersive training to scale up the workforce capability. Recently, working with some experts in the water deposits, they did a virtual field trip to Ecopetrol. Teams from Houston, Bogota, and Rio joined together virtually. The instructors were located in Aberdeen and in Rio, in Paraná, sorry, and took teams to virtual field trips in China, France, Mexico, and Chile and Argentina. Doing this in real life, it's well, almost impossible due to cost. But being able to use the technology enables people to see more examples from across the world. Helping with the breaking data silos, with automated data integration, and appropriate data integration reduces risk and uncertainty and improves decision making. Teams are able to achieve faster insights. Here we have a collaboration session with a Shell geologist in Houston. We connected both in virtual reality. I joined from London. And we went on to a virtual field trip in Texas to this type of reservoirs. And as you can see, it's a very interactive system where you are able to integrate different data sets, core data, thin sections, and all your technical information. So it's very easy to help integrate information between geologists and engineers or commercial, commercial managers. If we, in terms of kind of our services, we have Stratbox is the name of the platform in desktop in virtual reality. And we also have just built a web platform for core data integration. In terms of the desktop, I like to call it the Netflix of geoscience. You basically have a catalog of analog terrain models where people can, go and see analogs to the different resources they are exploiting or exploring for, and collaborate remotely through that. We also have a core explorer that is basically helping to create a digital twin for core stores. So core stores are being digitized. And on the web platform, you can bring together, core images, thin sections, and load all this data automatically at your fingertips. Technology can help you bring the digital twin for mining. And again, you can go all the way from real scale, having your model scale of your mine, and being able to integrate in the same space, rock samples, core data, and so on and so forth. Get faster insights, real-time remote collaboration, plan inspections of your mines, and get safe access to hazardous areas. I like to stop here and maybe just with the time that we have, I have my contact details here, but with the time that we have left, maybe just do some reflections about the panels and what we heard on the panels and how this can relate to technology. So today we heard about how geology in Colombia, geology in Brazil, is very attractive. There is a lot of potential for mineral resources and mineral exploration, but there are challenges. We heard about how it's been difficult to attract investment for capital investment. We have this perception about investors wanted to invest more on green technologies. We heard about the challenge, about the need to educate the community in what mining does, and this is a very similar challenge that the oil and gas industry has. The need to get that permission from the communities to operate. So mining companies can help themselves with the use of technology to engage for an effective engagement of communities, helping them to explain, using technology to help explain how they operate, what they do, and what the impact that they're going to have in the communities. And finally, we heard about the need for stable taxation, and also with all the regulatory changes that are happening in Colombia, the big question about if government is going to give a veto power to the communities or not. So it's very important that communities become an ally to the industry, and for that it's necessary that the industry explains clearly, communicates clearly to communities, what's the impact of their operations. I think my time is up. There are any questions?
I don't think that we have questions, Claudia. Let us double check, but I don't think we have any questions so far. If any member of the audience is interested on contacting Claudia, we will share the contact details after this this webinar. Same if you have any other questions with any questions for any of our panelists, please do send us an email when or please include your comments and suggestions and questions on the feedback form. The link is in the chat box. Thank you once again, Claudia, for sharing your insight into the technology, and also for summarizing some of the key messages from our panelists today. Please all remember that we are still conducting one-to-one meetings between investors and mining projects tomorrow afternoon and Monday afternoon London time. If you are interested in meeting mining projects in Colombia looking for investment, please email us at the chamber. Olivia will share the contact details in the chat. So thank you everybody for participating today. We look forward to continue this discussion in terms of mining and the prospects of mining in Colombia and Latin America. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.